Hey everyone, welcome back to Purposeful Armament. Today we have a little bit of a different video. Instead of shooting, we are going to be out here at sunrise doing a little bit of a debate. So we're going to try and make this kind of a series.
Yeah.
And we're basically just going to have different topics that we're going to hit.
It is going to be a yap fest.
Yeah, treat this like a podcast, I guess, if you want to. But we're just going to sit here and talk about...
Yeah, this content is definitely going to be able to be listened to very easily. You don't have to watch.
Exactly, yeah. So we're going to just sit here and talk about today's topic, which is pistol actions.
Need a little bit of extra energy during your range trip? Give W Energy a try. For a sugar-free and more cost-effective alternative to traditional energy drinks. Use code PA at checkout for 10% off your order.
Yeah.
All right.
You and I have very different views on this.
We do.
We have talked about this numerous times. And we always hit a point of contingency, and I hope that today we're able to get some sort of handle on our viewpoints. I think the root of the question is kind of a two-pointer.
Sure.
It's not only is one type of action best, and whenever we're talking about actions, we're talking about double single, single only, double only. Those are terrible. Striker fired.
Fire, yeah.
Yeah, and those fit numerous amounts of guns. But then we get into the second part, which is like the nuances of, hey, it might be a single action, but maybe it has some redemption on it because of X factor or this and that.
And just to let you guys know, we have plenty of experience with, between the two of us, we have plenty of experience with double single action only, striker fired. So
I'm just going to say this right off the rip. Double action only is quite possibly the worst.
Yes, I have had the opportunity to shoot one double action only pistol. It was a KAR, K-A-R. I've only ever seen one.
You only know this company makes one gun?
I've only seen this one specific gun. I'm sure that they probably have double action, single action, only. I'm sure that they do. But this thing was double action only, and
it was semi-auto?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was not a smooth double action. I've shot some double action revolvers.
Oh, the trigger was hitting the gritty with it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've shot some double action revolvers that are fantastic. And when I say fantastic, I mean I'm okay only shooting them double action because it's smooth, it's light, But this one was not like that.
It's interesting that you bring that up because that's part of the claim. Because my argument for a lot of these, what action is the best, is conceptual, the actual how it should work, versus the particular firearm that you're talking about, how it actually works. Yeah. That's the big thing, I think, is the point of contingency here. So I want to just kind of lay that
absolutely.
foundation. Yeah.
So
KAR pistol was good, bad?
No.
Sorry,
No, it was bad.
Okay.
In my opinion. Now, this is anecdotal, of course, so don't lay my feet to the fire or anything. But he carried that thing exclusively for years, and it worked for him. And he could shoot it.
It's a 9mm?
Yeah.
Okay.
He could shoot it fairly well.
I know a lot of people who can shoot double action fairly well. It seems like, in my experience, if it's a terrible, terrible trigger, that seems to be the make or break on a firearm.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, there are some double actions that are just so smooth. There are some revolvers. Revolvers seem to have the best double actions if there were to be a category. Yeah. Besides Langdon tactical triggers. I don't know if you've ever got to feel one of those. The double action on those is wicked smooth. They're really good. Yeah, that point's fairly well covered.
Double action only sucks.
Yeah. My second thing, which this may be a hot take, is I hate safeties on pistols.
That is a point that we don't agree with, that's for sure.
So my steps here to get to this, logical thought of saying, safeties on pistols is dumb. I'm not referring to grip safeties. I still don't like those. Yeah. I'm not referring to trigger safeties. I don't like those, but if it's on the pistol, fine. A lot of Smith & Wesson guns have both of those, and I'm fine with most of those.
Glock has that too.
Yes. I'm fine with all those. My big beef is whenever the shooter has to make an extra movement to flick off that safety. Now here again, there's the conceptual, the hypothetical
Yes.
should be the best category. This is all, it never happens, but then you get the actual, theory, thank you.
Yes.
Then you get the actual pistol.
Yeah.
So that's just my claim.
Yeah.
Oh, and the logical steps to that. If your pistol's inside of a good holster, you shouldn't need an extra safety. What are
think
you
that's
being
fair.
safe from? You, the shooter, should already be following the 4 gun safety rules. What's one more thing gonna help you?
So I tend to disagree because, in my experience, there are some pistols that are single action only, or they could even be double action, single action, and they have a safety.
Yeah.
I've seen that too. But when they have a safety, a manual safety, like a thumb safety that you have to flip down, sometimes it can be hit or miss. So
You're talking about the actual pistol here, the real world.
Yeah.
The actual safety lever
The
itself
actual
is
safety,
bad
yes.
or good.
Yes.
Okay.
So, like, for instance, I just bought that Prodigy. It's a 2011. Well, it's a 1911 double stack 9mm. It's a 2011.
Right.
All right.
Trademark bullcrap.
Yes. But it has a manual thumb safety. And in my experience, compared to my Glock out of the same holster, I don't have any issue with consistency. I don't have any issue with speed. The Glock is technically faster by like 2/200ths of a second.
Sure. My beef isn't with speed, but you did mention consistency. And I do agree. See, we've talked about this before, and we've got some foundation points. You brought up the fact that if you had a rifle, like the AR, it has a thumb safety.
Yeah.
You asked me if I had any sort of problem with that. Now, yes, by the thing that I already stated was if it's a rifle, doesn't have a holster, yes, it needs a safety, whereas, pistol has a holster, doesn't need one.
I think that's fair.
Are you telling me that you have never seen anybody flounder with a rifle where they press the trigger and they go, oh, safety's off?
I have seen it before.
Okay, that
Sure.
small thing right there is proving my point.
But-
because that's bound to happen at least once on a
But
pistol.
I would say, I hear you on that. But what I'm saying is that I think that it really comes down to training. We're not sponsored by Monster, by the way. But if Monster is
could be.
watching, but
the rifle point.
I think that we're talking about like two different things, right? Because you're more of the theory, and in theory, absolutely, like someone could have.
Well, hold on.
issue.
I can agree on both sides. I think there's some common ground we can find between these two tailgates. We can find something that we agree. on.
there's space there, but like
there's not a lot, but it's there.
I think that whenever it comes to the practical aspect of it, I think it comes down to training. Like, I don't think I've ever seen anyone who is at a high level of skill, whatever that means. I'm just going to say at a high level of skill.
Yeah, not a noob.
Yeah. I've seen noobs all the time who will be like, they'll sit there and they'll have their pistol and then like that. And they're like, oh shit, my safety is on.
Yeah.
Multiple things are wrong there because, you're
Yeah.
all that. But they had the safety left on. But I think that if you practice and you get really good with it, you can have a certain level of consistency. But, of course, in theory, I agree, there could be a situation where even if you are well trained, you just accidentally swipe past the safety. Or maybe you don't hit it or what have you, right?
Okay.
I think that that's something that could...
There's a small potential for that to happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, like, if you're well trained, and this is the thing too, I might jump the gun a little bit. Good pun.
Yeah.
But with double single action versus single action only with a manual safety, I think that the training that you would do for both of those is basically equal, right? To be proficient with both of those. The amount of like mental capacity, I guess, not to get like too esoteric here, but like the amount of mental capacity you have to do to remind yourself that, hey, my first shot is going to be a double action trigger pull. It's going to be longer. It's going to be heavier generally.
Speaking conceptually, yes.
Yes.
You have to put a mental block in your head saying, like, this one is heavier and longer. Whereas
Yes.
you can get into the practical where You know, you could be shooting the car pistol, or you could be shooting a Langdon Tactical, where that first double action is like nothing.
Yeah.
It's just, it happens to be longer.
Yeah. So you could get in those situations, but I think that it's training. You know, like I think that the same amount of time that you would take training to get through the double action trigger pull is going to be similar, if not 100% equal to the training that you're going to have to do to get the manual safety at a consistent place.
I can agree with that. I think I'm just on the opposite side of the fence. I would rather have a platform. You can't make a mistake not pulling the trigger. Like,
yeah, you either
the
pull it or
trigger
you don't.
is going to get pulled regardless.
Yeah. So like, I think that from my perspective, what a beautiful morning, by the way.
Yeah.
Sorry. Anyways, from my perspective, like, I agree. If
It
you want
seems
to
like
have
you
a
just
gun,
don't like the double action pull.
no, I personally don't.
Even if so,
Let me lay this down. Let me lay this down. If you want a gun that no matter what, you're going to be able to pull the trigger and it will drop the hammer. There's ammo, restrictions that could apply on whether or not the gun's going to go off. But
ammo restrictions.
yeah, like if you have
hard primer?
Yeah, if you have a hard primer or something, or you have some sort of malfunction, the gun. That's why I'm saying, like, if you want a gun where every time you pull the trigger, it's 100% going to go off, like, you can't guarantee that.
If you have a hard primer, you know what the beauty of a double single action is?
Yeah, you can
pull
pull
the
it again.
trigger again and smack the primer again.
But that is only in the case where the primer is just hard and it needs another hit.
Yeah, but you brought up this hypothetical saying that, like, if you want a gun that goes off every single time.
I know. Let me finish the train of thought.
In that weird hypothetical, the double single action wins.
Yes. Let me continue down the path I was going, okay?
All right. Sorry.
If that's what you want out of a gun, double single action is the best. Period. Because that's what you're gonna like. That's just.
Isn't that like the only qualifier you want in a gun, though? What's your stake to the claim? What makes single action only better?
For me, in my opinion, single action only is not better. I think that it is equal to, because of this reason. Like I was saying, if you have a hard primer and that primer just needs hit again, double action will win. But is it better for you to take the extra time to pull that trigger again and see if it'll go off again? Or is it better to just, you get the click, oh, it didn't go bang, I'm going to tap rack and then pull the trigger again?
I'm trying to think of what my average split time is. Probably a 15th of a second.
Yeah. So, like, that's what I'm saying.
Adding an extra 15th of a second, just go click, click, and then go.
But it's slower.
Sure, it may be slower. It depends on how hard the primer is what that.
And it also depends if that is the issue. It could just be a round that, like, I've seen this before. Shout out Winchester. I've had rounds that have not been loaded with any powder. Like, the bullet is in the case, and it's not loaded with any powder. I've also had that happen with AAC, but we'll not go there. Please sponsor us, AAC. I want your ammo. In those particular instances, I would have wasted more time with the pulling the trigger again and then being like, okay, the trigger didn't go off again, so now I need to rack it. It's a very small, minuscule amount of time, but we're in the edge cases here. We're talking about, like, 99% of the time, if you have a good gun and you're running ammo that's not Winchester through it, you're going to, the gun's going to go off. Like, 99% of the time. It's only in those and by the way, we shoot a lot. Compared to most people, that's a lot. And I have those happen occasionally. That's where I arrive at that percentage. That's my opinion. I think that, like, single action is maybe in a couple of edge cases, it's not necessarily.
We keep on going back and forth between single action and double action. Like, that's the main competitor here. But
I haven't gotten to striker yet.
You're saying that because of just the weird ammo thing, single action is okay. But
I think it's comparable to double action.
You're not really talking about the action of the pistol. If we're talking about what you should do if the gun goes click. Sure.
Well, it is the action of the pistol.
The double action, sure, there is something that you could do that's you wouldn't be able to do with a single action. Well, I guess you could. You could pull the hammer back down and then do that again, but that would be tremendous waste of time.
It's just more worth it to give it an old rack.
For a single action, for sure.
Yeah.
But for a double action, I think taking that extra 15th of a second to see if it'll go off, because I've had times where I've shot Dan Wessons before where, well, and this is a case against the single action because I just don't like 1911s or really anything that's single action. It'll hit, and the hammer spring wasn't hard enough to whack the primer. And then we're like, oh, that's odd. Throw it into, my M9, click, bang, it goes right off. Maybe it's a difference in hammer weight, or maybe it was a hard primer. I had taken a round that had already been smacked, put it in my gun, then smack it again, then it goes off. It's like, is it a hard primer, or is it a hammer issue? Or,
and again, that's hard to tell
Dan
too,
Wesson,
because it's like, there's so many
federal agents everywhere.
Jeez, there's a lot of drones, dude. Oh my God. You do have to think about the specific firearm that you're shooting.
Yeah, we're getting away from the conceptual now in Lank.
There are some, like you said about that Dan Wesson, there's some 1911s.
Yeah,
like
great
the new
segue.
Kimbers that are just ass.
Garbage.
They're just ass.
Yep.
But if you shoot something that's like an old, 2 World Wars, we're going to get to shoot some today.
Yeah.
But if you shoot those...
Genuine, like, World War II issue.
Yes.
Looking
like,
forward to that.
Remington Rand and Colt, whatever the designation was. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that if you get some shitty single action...
Yeah, it's going to be garbage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's going to suck.
I'm going to add a little bit on top of that because,
Sure.
we talked about the conceptual, now we're talking about, like, the actual pistol in itself. I had the recent experience of being able to get my hands on several staccatos, and I'm again, you probably already know I don't like single actions, but the way the frame molded to my hand, and either the width or the angle, I'm not sure what, but the way that the thumb safety did set, I was like, I could see how people would really enjoy getting to shoot this.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to put a lot of time on it, but
I have a Prodigy,
very
which
smooth shooting though.
isn't quite a staccato, but I've shot plenty of staccatos, and by plenty I mean like one. That's plenty in terms of staccatos. You try one, you've tried them all for the most part. But
yeah, it seems like once you stray away from the single staccato brand, it's really just about how you've modified it at that point.
Well, like my Prodigy is not modified at all, and I think the safety on it is phenomenal. I think that it has,
and that's the niche of your particular gun.
Correct.
Where
Yeah.
I've got several sitting in the truck right now that just the safety on them. One, it's not ergonomic. Two, I find it hard to push down in a scenario where you are to need to use that pistol defensively. It's not okay.
Maybe it would be fair to say that a shitty gun is a shitty gun, no matter what. Sorry,
a phenomenal way to put it.
Gun,
yep.
Yeah, it's a crappy gun, no matter what. But like that's just because I always argue from the experience that I've had with a particular thing. So if I've had experience with a 2011, which I have, just like Jacob said, it feels great in the hand. Like even my Prodigy, it feels good in the hand. It's big, it's bulky. Not that the M9 isn't. The M9 I think feels good in the hand too.
It's bulky.
But like
it's not HK bulky, but it's
that's fair. But like it feels good, and then the safety on it has this nice little, it's not the normal safety.
Yeah, it's angled a little bit, and it's lightweight as well.
It's lightweight too.
It doesn't it's not like it just falls, but like you put your thumb on it and it clicks down the way you think a safety should, and it's like, oh.
And the way that I have my holster set up, I get it all in one stroke. I get the active retention on the thumb.
You're releasing safety whenever you're down here?
Yes.
Interesting.
I get the active retention. I hit that. And
I know a lot of internet warriors are going to be mad right now because they're like, oh, you should be disengaging the safety right here.
Exactly. But the problem with that is if you guys do that, that is bullshit because some SIGs do. But like your P320 does not have a manual safety. My Glock does not have a manual safety. So technically, when I'm right here, safety is off.
Okay.
All right? And my finger is off the trigger until I get up here because this is where I'm going to be engaging it. And the issue with the safety...
I know you're valid. I just know people are going to be mad.
This is a point potentially against the single actions, all right? Because I can see my own biases, okay? I'm not saying you can't.
I can't see mine. I can't. Double single action is the best. I'm just going to say that.
If you're waiting to disengage the safety until you're coming up and getting on target, particularly...
I think your hand grip...
My grip is already built.
I know, but if you're waiting to
If you're
disengage
waiting,
it,
you have to break your grip. You have to.
I don't think you have to. No, you're just dropping the thumb at the end.
Maybe. I've not had that experience.
Oh. We are rummaging through the truck right now. I have to know. Yes, I know. It's not a safety, but they make the F version of this. No, technically not the M9A4, but of the M9s, the decocker lever was also safety. So if you were to grab this thing and then go build your grip, and then, well, the M9 is kind of ass ergonomics to try to hit the decocker up there, but you could rest your thumb right up there and...
See, that is what... Whoa! He's got a silent on here?
Oh,
That's
God.
so cool. But if you do that, where you come up over the top, yeah, I could probably do that.
You have freakishly long thumbs. For you
could
to be able to hit
probably-
an M9 decocker from a good grip like that,
Yeah, you could probably do that.
sorry, I just muted your debunk against the single action.
Okay, well then I love single action again.
Yeah,
Single action
screw
is
you.
great.
God dang it. God dang it.
But you know, like in my experience, and this is a point that I want to bring up too. My experience with my Prodigy is super limited. I have probably 10,000 rounds in my Glock. I haven't used the Prodigy anywhere close to as much as I've used the Glock. So there could be nuances of the training that I have to do for the Prodigy to make it as fast as possible.
Yeah.
But the way that I have modified my holster, I have video of it. Okay, so I'll put that in here. I've modified my holster so that I can hit my safety on my draw stroke down. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's just how I like to do it because I've always been pulling out a striker fired gun and I've never I build my grip right here and that's it. That's game over, man. Game over. Like that's just it. We haven't talked at all about striker fire guns.
No. And we just
Here's what I
brushed
will
over
say.
double action and just said they're garbage.
Well, they are. There's not much more.
So here's a question for you. There's one firearm in particular that like kind of is both.
Sure.
And I want to ask you this. Have you heard of the Smith & Wesson Equalizer?
No.
It's an internally hammer-fired, striker-fired gun.
Is it similar to the Walther P99?
Does it have an internal hammer? I don't know.
Well, the Walther P99 is a striker fired gun, but it has double single action. Like that's what it feels like.
No.
Okay.
This
Continue forward.
the Equalizer behaves like a striker fired all
Okay.
the time.
Okay.
Except it's not a striker,
It's a
it's
hammer.
an internal hammer.
Okay.
That's the only difference. So,
Interesting.
and the weird thing, I like that one. But you're going to hate me. There is a safety on it.
See, this is absolutely perfect because no matter where you're at in this debate, whether you like striker fired, double single action only, or double action only if you're like 95 years old, no matter what, you can find a gun that you're just like, huh,
It breaks the rule.
I kind of like that.
It breaks the rule. It's a weird pistol.
Sure.
I'm not saying it's the best pistol in the world, but for a somewhat compact gun, it's thinner than a P320 compact.
Based.
It's smaller than a P320 compact
Based.
and holds the same amount of rounds. It fits a weird category, and I don't know technically if people would call that a striker fired. But now we get onto the topic of striker fireds, and I think we already, beat the horse to death. If you've
I
got a
think striker
garbage
fireds
gun,
are
you've got a
best.
garbage gun.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think
like-
striker fireds are the best.
If it doesn't have a safety, yeah.
I think that the majority of striker fireds don't have safeties.
Yeah,
The
one
reason
of
why-
the best striker fireds, and I don't know if you would technically call it a striker because there is something weird about the rear end of it. The Canic series.
Sure.
You've seen the back of their slides.
It looks a lot like a Walther.
There's a pin that gets drawn back and drops.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Is it still
It's
striker?
very similar to a Walther, and I think it is striker fired. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the best striker from factory. I'm not
Sure.
saying, like, you can obviously modify a Glock to have like a hairpin trigger. That's not what I'm talking about. Like
Yeah.
stock pistols, Canny probably has one of the best triggers.
So here's the crazy part that I'm going to
For a
start,
striker.
that I'm going to put down for striker fire. I don't think striker fires have the best anything, but I think that they're the easiest to like understand and the easiest for people to use.
For sure.
Because
And the double single action comes right behind it in ease of use.
I think double single action and single action only are.
But you said for ease of use.
I know for ease of use.
There's no safeties. There's no, oh, do I have to hold this thing, hammer up, safety down, or hammer up?
Okay,
or like,
okay.
There's
I
no,
see what you're
the
saying.
manual of arms between the striker fired and the double single action is so similar, they can be treated the same. Sure, yes, the person always does come into play when
If
we're
you're-
talking about guns, but like, I'm talking specifically about the manual of arms, how the pistol behaves,
Okay, then I agree with you.
etc.
If we put it
In
into someone's,
complexity, besides the double action only, single action only is like one of the worst in manual of arms.
depending on the gun.
How, depending on the gun? How? Because the
Because
manual of arms.
my Prodigy has a nice big safety.
I'm
that
talking about
is
manual
very
of
easy to
arms, the
press.
actual standard procedures that you use to use it.
Yeah, it's easy.
It's not easier than a striker fired or a double single action.
It's not easier than a striker fire.
How is it?
The reason that I bring up training is because if you're talking about if some grandma who's never shot a gun before picks up your gun and just needs to shoot it, double single action, absolutely, or striker fire, because either one of those.
You just proved my point.
But what
The
I'm
manual
saying
of arms
is,
is the same.
if you're someone who actually engages with, like, if you're someone who actually shoots the gun, I think that you can overcome the manual of arms. If you're talking about someone untrained, that's totally fine. I agree with you. But if you're talking about someone who trains and who is confident with whatever firearm it is, I think that the manual safety isn't a very big deal for someone who actually shoots.
Isn't a big deal.
It's not something that is going to like prevent them or anything like that.
No. And that's a point that I want to make as well, is that, like, I'm not saying that I would never, ever, ever carry a gun that had a safety on it. It's just that I wouldn't prefer it.
Fair, valid. Let's get back on striker fire since we were talking about that.
Yeah, you mentioned a weird point of, like, they're not a master of anything.
No.
And I think...
And I'll say this, maybe I forget the Grand Thumb that he did an ice test, he did a mud test. I forget how the Glock or like the SIGs fared. But the reason that I think striker fires are the best, I think they're the best for, like, I guess you could say, like, combat use or like combat use, life
What?
and liberty. The reason why is I'm
Oh.
pretty sure that those guns, everything is contained.
That combat.
With
Sure.
this, you have a hammer. If something
There went my iPad.
if something gets between the hammer and the frame of the gun here,
Okay, valid.
it's
Yeah.
not going to go off. But with the striker
If
fire,
you're in the
with-
Middle East, and
yeah, but that's something that you should consider potentially, right? A striker fire, everything is contained.
Here's the beauty of a double action, though. For the most part, this is kept down whenever you're holding it. That way, the first shot lifts. Oh, exposed surface.
Sure.
You can-
Sure, but the same is true with a striker fire gun. Also, everything is
Sure.
contained.
Everything is
And-
contained, and for the most part, it's going to be. Yeah.
Striker
Oh.
fire triggers are not very good.
You bring up a valid point. A lot of people didn't like the M9 because it collected dust, and it was like, oh, there's a potential for it to fail. Okay, sorry.
It's whatever. Yeah.
Autism. Yeah.
Striker fire triggers
They're usually
are not great. They're
yeah.
usually mid.
60,
I don't think
65%.
they're not bad. They're not good. They're just kind of meh. Like, they're just, you can use them. You can train through them. My Glock, I think, has a really good factory trigger on it, but I've shot 10,000 rounds through it. And it's still not as good as, like, a single action trigger pull, right? So,
Yeah.
but here's the beauty of it. No safety, same trigger pull every single time. So if we're talking about, like, and the reason I bring up, like, the triggers are kind of mid, it doesn't really matter that much because they're good enough that you can use. They're not so bad that they're going to be throwing your shots all over the place, but they're good enough that, like, any grunt can use it, right?
Right.
They can get it figured out. They can engage what they need to engage. The gun is pretty self-contained and self-sufficient. You know, it can run through a lot.
It almost seems like that internally hammer-fired striker, the Equalizer, seems to be like a weird contender.
That might be like the best gun. That actually
Goated.
might be the best gun ever made because it has all of the great parts of the double single action, which I agree there are some good parts of double single action.
No,
I'm
it
not
doesn't
trying
have
to
any.
say,
It doesn't have any double action.
oh,
It has the best part of single action.
Oh, well, no, okay, then yeah, exactly.
No, screw you.
I agree. Jacob's agreeing with me. Look at that. I think striker fires are like the best. Like, okay, if someone was to come up to me and they were to say, "Hey, I'm going for my first gun. What should I get?"
Yeah, striker fired is like the 1500 of the truck world.
Yes, it's just a basic ass truck.
It does basically
what you
everything
need to
really
do.
well. Yeah.
It's nothing fancy. It's not a Denali trim. I think really what it comes down to, and what I really want to convey through this entire debate, just get good.
Yeah.
Get good, because
we
all
have
of
been
these,
saying this for years.
Yeah.
Get GG, get good.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, yeah, there's theoretical, bonuses to double single action.
We can get into the nonsense, but in all reality, if both you and I are like, you're gonna have a single action, so what's the garbagiest of single actions that's still okay? Well, you think of that, I could have the garbagiest of double single actions, which
a Kimber 1911. I don't
sure.
know.
You know, it doesn't matter what gun there is, as long as you're getting out there and you're training with it and you're learning the fundamentals,
Yeah,
you're gonna understand the manual of arms either way.
yeah,
You're gonna develop your own preferences, as we definitely have.
yeah, exactly. And
We share a lot of same commonality, which is
Yeah.
why that we're business partners. But it's
the crazy thing is I don't know why, I just do not like having different trigger pulls. I don't know why. I can't sit here and
I
tell
find
you
an
why.
inherent safety because, at least with this particular model of gun, if there weren't an optic on top of it, you could see that if for some godforsaken reason you were to pull the hammer back and not hit the trigger, but then like smack this thing, there's a block. If you take this thing apart, it will not hit the firing pin.
That is fair.
love that.
That is
And
fair.
I know that the only way that it would is if the trigger is actively being pulled and the hammer would fall. So if I'm holstering this thing and I've got my thumb on the hammer, it is safe as can be. There's
Yeah.
nothing safer. Whereas, I daily carry the P320. It's a little bit scarier because of all the news reports of, the 320, like, is today going to be the day?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So, but with that being said, you're going to develop your own preferences as you go out and shoot. You're
Yeah.
going to figure out what you like and what you don't like, and then you're going to build your stuff around it. So is there anything that's really better than the other?
yes.
Yeah, there is. But if you train and you're good with what you have, the difference, if it's this, for instance, this big, it's going to start shrinking
Yeah,
as you
yeah,
get
yeah.
as you
If
get
you were to
better.
hand just a absolute ape, fine-tuned staccato, whatever the heck, hairpin trigger, the chances of him making, a 100-yard shot on a silhouette,
Pretty high.
you could probably do it, yeah. As long as you had a red dot and he didn't absolutely jerk the trigger, but yeah. And then if you hand that same ape something that's got a garbage trigger on it,
That car in double.
and then he pulls something stupid, then
I want to
Yeah.
say this because this is a good anecdote. It was probably 6.5, 7 years ago whenever I first went out to go shooting with him. And I had my Glock 19. I just bought my Glock 19. And I was shooting that. And I tried his car, which was the double action only pistol. I couldn't hit anything with it, dude.
valid.
I sucked so bad. But then I see him go and just knock down the plate rack. What I'm
Valid.
trying to say is,
Yeah,
is
if
that
you don't have the
training.
fundamentals
Yeah.
knocked down, yeah.
Exactly. And if you're a really good shooter, you're going to find a gun that's going to allow you to access more of your capabilities than something else. Like,
In a terrible way, though, you can also say the same thing about a bad shooter.
the difference in your split times between
You can hold
this,
it. You don't have to keep on grazing it.
your capability, like, let's say your split times. What's the difference in your split time between this and the P320?
The fastest split times I've gotten with that is 11 hundredths of a second. And that was first day of shooting it.
Sure.
First day of shooting it, getting 11 hundredths of a second. Whereas I have been shooting this a long time, and my fastest ever and I've never been able to repeat it, was a 1200ths of a second.
Okay.
Average, it's sitting around 15 to 18.
15
Which
to
is
18
still not
average.
terrible, but like...
And, you know, I'm not going to lie. We were testing that app a weekend or two ago. More on that soon. But anyways, I was testing that app, right? And part of what we were doing for testing was seeing how fast the splits could be, like how close they could be together to make sure that it wasn't picking up more shots than what would be expected, right?
What, you're shooting steel or you're shooting cardboard?
We were just shooting cardboard. We were shooting at steel, but I was just trying to really blaze it. I wasn't aiming at anything. I was aiming at the backstop because we were trying to blaze it. My point with that is the fastest time that I was able to get with my 2011 was very similar to yours. It was 0.13.
Yeah.
That was as fast as my split time could be. And with my Glock, sits around 0.18. That's about
the average.
My average. That just goes to show that, like, striker fired, not the best at really anything, right?
Depending on the gun, because like a Canic trigger has a fairly decent reset, and you could ride that fairly fast.
So it could probably do it. The point is that
on average.
The point is that I'm at a certain level as a shooter. My guns allow me to access different levels of that. There's not necessarily
you're not going to achieve the same split time.
Exactly. So you have to think about that too. It's not necessarily about the equipment. It is about you, but it is a little bit about the equipment too.
Yeah, if it's withholding you, you're not going to be able to achieve it either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to
We've had this conversation too a lot, where equipment will never make you better. Equipment will just allow you to achieve your full potential.
Yeah.
And that's something that the internet warriors are going to hate as well. Which, if you're listening at this point, props to you.
Yeah, this is
wherever you're at.
Yeah, this is a lot of yapping. This is a lot of, but I hope that people enjoy it because it's something that you and I have had lots of discussion back and forth about.
Discussion
and I think
is a tame way to play it.
There are two people here that have different preferences, and our preferences, it matters for us.
Oh, okay.
But I'm trying
Does
to
it not matter for anybody else?
There are things that are inherently better than other things.
Yeah, double action absolutely sucks.
Yes, double action only is ass.
Oh yeah, and,
who would ever want that?
I hope it should be like known that like I am a double single action advocate as long as it's on a semi-auto. If you're using double single action on a revolver, in general, if you're carrying a revolver in 2024, something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
Unless it's bigger than 357 Magnum, in which case you might be based. But
yes.
if you're carrying a revolver that is of similar caliber size to 9 or 10 mil, then
you want to know? You mentioned 357 Magnum. I'm going to give you a fun little anecdote as we kind of close out here.
A fun little ditty.
And this is going to be
a fun little ditty is no longer fun.
All right, I've said all that I want to say.
No, thank you for listening.
If you're
at this point, you guys are great. There's a lot of stuff in the works. There's a lot of content that we're making. There's a lot of big steps that are being taken. So if you've been following Purposeful Armament as to this point, keep on.
We appreciate it a lot. That's huge.
Exactly. Yeah. If you've been following to this point, you're a Giga Chad, but it's only going to get better from here. We've got a lot of stuff in store as the company grows, and got a lot of cool stuff coming.
I will say this too. You guys are watching this in its entirety on YouTube. We are planning on making a Patreon. It's not going to be anything. We're not going to charge people like $500 a month or something crazy, unless. No, I'm joking.
These will come off.
So we are planning on making a Patreon so that those of you who want to can support us. Like Jacob mentioned at the beginning of this, you guys are what is carrying us forward, quite literally.
The bread and butter.
You guys are the bread and butter. So if any of you are interested in this kind of content, we're planning on releasing maybe the first 10 minutes or so, 8 minutes, whatever, on YouTube. And then we'll have the rest of it on Patreon so that you guys can continue to support us. We really appreciate it a lot. It really means a lot.
Yeah.
And we, like Jake mentioned, we've got some big stuff coming. You already saw a little teaser of the app. We've got some cool stuff in
Yeah.
the works. Some cool content too. So appreciate it, guys. Take care.
Keep on training.